How's it going, everyone? In today's video I'm going to be showing you guys how to replace your turbocharger core on your GTB1549V turbocharger. This is more specifically on my 2014 or 2015 diesel Chevy Cruze. Just to start off, some of the tools you're going to need are a either 5/16 ratcheting wrench, or more specifically a 8mm ratcheting wrench if you have one. You're going to need a 10mm socket, and obviously a ratchet, a T25 Torx, and then a 90-degree pick. The 90-degree pick is going to be for removing the clip on the end of this actuator. For the ease of doing the video, I already removed some of the bolts. So what we're going to do is we're going to start off by removing the intake side of the turbocharger. These bolts are a 8mm, and I'm going to be using either 5/16 ratcheting wrench or 8mm ratcheting wrench if you have one. Alright, so like I said before, you can either use a 5/16 or a 8mm ratcheting wrench to pull off the intake side. So to start, we're going to take our 90-degree pick and pull off this clip on the wastegate actuator. You're going to want to hold on to the clip because your kit most likely does not come with one of these. So I'm going to put it with my new O-ring. So you're just going to pop that arm off. And there you go. We're just going to set this off to the side. Obviously you can see this is where my turbocharger failed. Just wanted to point it out. When you go to reassemble the core, this is where your new O-ring is going to go. That's my new one sitting up there. So moving forward, we're going to remove the 10mm bolts right here. So ratchet, 10mm socket. Okay, so I have all the bolts out of the exhaust side of the turbocharger. Just to keep in mind, inside here there's a metal E-seal that you're going to want to hold on to, because your new cartridge or core will not come with a new E-seal. So just set that aside up top as well. And then you're also going to want to keep these E-seals on here because they don't give you replacements for those. So I just wanted to state now that the exhaust side is off. Yours will not look nearly as clean as this. I actually sandblasted mine, but you can also get away with using a steel wire brush. Just clean off the inside of there so that the E-seal, when you go to reassemble everything, it's got a better chance of going in correctly and seating. Okay, for the more critical part of this video, you're going to need a T25 Torx to remove the 3 screws in the vane assembly on the top of your core. This is to get transferred over to your new core assembly. So with that being said, while you pull the 3 screws out, you're going to want to hold the vane assembly on the top of your core. And that's because there's a lot of parts and pieces behind the vane assembly that like to fall apart. So in order to prevent that, this is the easiest way I found to get everything to transfer over without falling apart. And that is to pull all the screws out, hold the vane assembly on the core, flip it over while holding everything together. And then while holding the bottom, you're going to lift the core up off of the assembly. Now I understand that for many of you, the assembly might fall apart if you pull it off the top by accident. So if you stick to the end of this video, what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you guys how to assemble the vane assembly. Okay, now that I have all 3 of the Torx bolts removed, like I said before, what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold the vane assembly onto the core and I'm going to flip it over, keeping pressure on the bottom. And then you're going to gently lift the core up off of the assembly. Try and keep the assembly as level as possible. And that's that. I just wanted to note for you guys real quick, there's a removable guide pin that was left over in my vane assembly. So we're just going to put that with the old core, because my new core cartridge came with a new pin. And I'm going to transfer this over to the assembly, because when you go to lift the core over top of the assembly later on, just with gravity, that removable guide pin is likely going to fall and get misplaced within the assembly where you're not going to want it to be. So I'll show you guys the assembly next. Before I show you guys the assembly of my new core onto the vane assembly, I just wanted to point out a few things. I noticed there was some residue on the impeller on my new core, so I'm going to wipe that off. And the reason for that is it's likely going to throw off the balance on the impeller and therefore wear down the life of my turbo. So moving on, if you see, there's two small pin holes in the vane housing, and the smaller hole that is closer to the edge of the housing, that hole right there should be directly aligned with your control arm opening right here and the control ring, which is this guy. And then the other thing, which is most important, is when you guys were taking off the vane assembly, so this guy right here, if any of the parts or pieces fell off or got joggled around, the only thing you really need to keep in mind is there is a stationary guide pin that is going to fall into place inside this hole right here. There's going to be a bushing directly after this arm, and then after this arm will be your control arm opening in the control ring. So I know it sounds complicated, but if you just look at mine, duplicate it just like this, and you will be good to go. The reason for that is in the control ring, if this opening is anywhere else on here, your control arm is not going to fall into place, and your guide pins will not fall into place onto the vane assembly. Next, what I'm going to be doing is putting the new core cartridge onto the vane assembly. So what you're going to want to do is align the control arm up with the opening inside of your control ring, which is right there. So what I recommend is keeping the vane assembly flush on a flat surface, and then you're going to line up that control ring with the arm, and it doesn't have to be perfect. Next, what you're going to do is you're going to try and find the stationary pin, not the removable one, and it's going to be up here on the new core, and you're going to line it up with, let's see if I can show you guys, the gap right there on the vane assembly. So that's where the stationary guide pin is going to fall into. So I'm going to try and get that on video. And then once you get that guide pin in, the removable guide pin should also fall into place. So you can see it's fairly flush. So now the other part that you guys need to get to fall into place is going to be the control arm. So all you simply have to do is move the control arm lever, and you should hear it fall into place. So there it was. And now all you need to do is grab your Torx T25 and hold the assembly together, and then flip it back over while holding it together, and I will show you guys the assembly of that. Okay, now that we have the vane assembly on the core, I'm just holding the two pieces together. I should just be able to turn this vane housing around, and these two holes are going to line up. So you can see I'm halfway between both of them. And the way you know that you're correctly aligned on the core housing is the small hole, not this one. The one closer to the edge is lined up, and you can see completely through into the core assembly. Now that you have all three of your T25 Torx bolts installed in the vane housing, all we need to do is verify that our control vanes are moving in and out with the actuation of the control arm. So there shouldn't be too much tension on this control arm to move the vanes. So that's, I would say, a decent amount of pressure, but it's light. So if yours is not light, then what I would do is loosen up the three bolts again. Don't take them completely out, but try and shift the housing around on the inside to loosen up those vanes, and then tighten the bolts back down until you get a just a really light amount of pressure to move the vanes. And then once all that's done, we can then place it into our exhaust side. Alright, so we're going to take our old E-seal and place it in our cleaned out housing. And then before I place the new core into the exhaust side, I just wanted to show you guys there's two more seals that won't come with your new core, so hopefully you held on to those by now. But there's a gap inside the seal. What you're going to want to do is make sure that both of these seals gaps are not directly in line with each other. So what I did is I just placed this one 180 out from the other one, and that's just so that you don't have exhaust blow by when you go to reassemble everything. So now there's a little guide pin on your new core, and what you're going to do is place that into this slot right here. So just make sure your E-seal is in its groove, and it should fall right into place like that. And then for the bolts, they are 10 millimeter, and there's two different sides of the washers. There's a rounded side and a flat side. What you're going to want is the rounded side of the washer on the bottom of the head of the bolt. So like that. Got the round side up, and then just run those down. Again, it was a 10 millimeter. Okay, so I noticed on my intake impeller as well, I have some residue on here. I know I didn't clean it on the other side yet, but that's because I plan on disassembling this at the end of the video to show you guys how the vane assembly goes together if it fell apart. So getting back on track, I'm not going to be putting the new O-ring on the intake side yet, and that's because the intake side doesn't have any guide pins. So what you want is no tension on your wastegate actuator. So what we're going to do is we're just going to temp install this on the turbo real quick. And you're going to throw the arm on the wastegate, and then you're going to temporarily put the clip in. The reason you're not installing the O-ring quite yet is because you're going to be rotating the intake side of the turbo on the core so that you don't have any preload on the wastegate actuator. So I'll show you that right now. So you're going to want a Sharpie, and then what you're going to do is you're going to rotate the intake side of the turbo while holding onto the exhaust. And what you're going to do is you're going to pull tension on the turbo and let it actuate on the inside. And then the moment you release the intake, wherever it lays, what you're going to do is you're going to mark it with a Sharpie between the intake side and the core. And that's basically your alignment mark or your guide pin. So what I like to do is actuate the wastegate again and see where it rests and make sure that my mark lines up again. And then what you're going to do is you're going to pull the wastegate arm clip back off. I'm going to take the intake side off and then reassemble with the new O-ring. Okay, now that we have our Sharpie alignment mark, I'm just going to put on a new O-ring. Place the intake side back on. Put that clip back in, and then I'll show you the alignment mark with the 8mm bolts going in. Okay, now that the clip's in and I have all the bolts started, you can see that my alignment mark isn't lined up. So what I'm going to do is kind of lift the intake side off so that I don't tear the O-ring, and then place it so that it is aligned. And then I'm going to hold it in that spot and then tighten at least 2 bolts down so that the assembly doesn't move. And then once you have everything down, just check the alignment again, and that's pretty much the conclusion of the assembly of the new core with both sides, intake and exhaust. So what I'm going to show you guys next is the assembly of the vane assembly. As promised, in the next part of this video, I'm going to show you guys how to fix the internals of the vane assembly on this turbo. It's quite complicated, and you'll come to realize that if you haven't already. So if you were to pull all 3 Torx bolts out and accidentally lift the top off like this, you've already messed up, unless you just put it right back over the top. And then you flip the core over, then you're good. Likely, if you've gotten this far in the video, you're beyond that point. So we're gonna just place that off to the side. So you can see how the vanes are aligned currently. What I like to refer to the vanes as is they're kind of in the shape of a fish. So if this were the head of the fish, let me show you a better one. If this were the head of the fish and that's where the tail is supposed to sit on the top of the head of the vane or the fish. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to lift this assembly off, and you can see all the arms go everywhere. So I'm going to place this off to the side, and then you can see the control arm fits inside of the only groove inside of the control ring right there. So we're going to set that off to the side. And then there's 3 bushings. Alright. Okay, I just wanted to point out really quick, if you had already transferred over your new pin from the core, it's going to be the one just to the left of this hole right here. And there's only 2 right next to each other. So this is my new one. I want to put this with my new core. All of these pins, including the new one, are the same length. So what I'm going to do is just set these off to the side really quick. What you're going to need is a rubber band to fit around the vanes. You could probably use a hairband as well, but it's going to need to be about the center of all the vanes wide. And I'll show you that in a second. Okay, so the plan now is to place the tail of the vane, or the tail of the fish, over top of the head of the previous vane. So what I'm going to do is keep going around and placing the vanes on top of each other. So I'll come back once those are all done. Alright, now that all of the tails are sitting on top of the head, what you're going to do is you're going to take your rubber band and you're going to place it around all the vanes as such. And then once the rubber band is on, you're going to go back around and make sure that all of the tails are still sitting on top of the head. I can tell already that a few of mine have already come off, so I'm just going to adjust those, and I'll show you what's next after that. Okay, now all I'm going to do is flip the vane assembly over, and then what you're going to do is you're going to find the stationary guide pin recess in the vane assembly. So that's this guy right here. You're going to face this at the 6 o'clock position to you, and then you're going to grab your pins that we removed earlier and set aside. You're going to place them into these slots. The third pin is going to go up into the top left. And you know this, that they're all in the correct position because they will all be the same height. If you were to accidentally put that pin in this hole, it would sit up higher than the other two. So now all I'm going to do is grab the control ring. There are technically two different sides to the control ring. One's more round, one's more flush. The control ring is completely symmetrical other than the arm here. So it doesn't matter which side you have the control ring on. So I'm going to pick this side. Now the more critical part of this is going to be aligning the control arm up two vane arms, so this guy and this guy, away from your stationary recess. So again, it's going to be recess and then two vane arms away, and you will have your control arm. And it does need to be exactly that far away, otherwise it will not fit on your core. So now all I'm going to do is align all of the control arms up with the ring until it sits flush. And then what you need to do is take your bushings, and you can see they're in the shape of an eye. The control ring needs to sit in the groove of the eye. Now in order to place the bushings onto the pin, what you're going to do is lift the control ring up on one corner and place the bushing onto the pin. So you can see the control ring is halfway in between the eye and the ring, and they're all sitting flush. Okay, all we need to do now is remove the rubber band from around the vane assembly. So in order to do that, what you're going to do is you're going to hold down on the assembly, thumbs on the control ring, and you're going to carefully flip the assembly over. I just lay it down flush on a table and then pull that rubber band back off. Take it to the edge of the table again, hold on to the control ring and the assembly and flip it back over. And then you're going to place it back down. Once it's down, what you're going to do is grab your vane housing and you're going to line up these two holes closest to the edge of the housing, so not these two. Once it's at the 6 o'clock position, make sure that your vane assembly control arm has the opening at the 6 o'clock position as well. And then you're going to take two fingers, pull it apart on the vane assembly, lift it up and place it into the housing. And then the control arm should be sitting directly in the center of both of these holes. And then what you're going to do is grab your new core. It should have came with a removable guide pin, a new one, and you're going to place it into that hole there. And then I'll show you guys how to put that back on the core. Okay, so now all I have is the control arm again at the 6 o'clock position and the control ring. And I have the turbo core control arm facing up. And what I'm going to be doing is lifting it directly over the top and placing the control arm directly center with the opening in the ring. It doesn't have to be perfect. Once that's done, all we need to do is find the stationary guide pin. So it should be approximately here. I think mine already fell in place. So you can see the stationary guide pin is right there, and it's going to be going into this slot right here. So once that's in place, you're just going to spin it around. Make sure the removable guide pin is in place. So since the core is fairly flush, I know that both guide pins are in. And now all we need to do is actuate the control arm to get it to fall into our control ring. So you're just going to simply move the control arm until you hear it fall into place. Which mine was already in place. So okay, now all we need to do is line up the control arm opening and the control ring with our two holes. And then you're going to grab the turbo core, make sure that the control arm is facing up, because what we're going to do is flip it up and place it down in line with the control ring opening. And then we're simply going to rotate it around and find our stationary guide pin. So it should be around here. So the stationary guide pin is going to fall into this slot right here, that opening. And you can see our stationary guide pin is sitting up on the top there. So I'm just going to rotate this a little bit to get it to fall into place. And then you're going to turn it around and make sure that your removable guide pin is falling into place. So with it being fairly flush, I know that both of them are in. And lastly, all we need to do is make sure that our control arm has fallen into the ring so that the vanes can actuate. So I'm just simply going to move the control arm until I hear it fall into place, which it looks like mine has already fallen into place, and you can tell that because when I move the arm, the vanes move. Now all I'm going to do is hold on to the housing and carefully flip the Turbo Core cartridge over. And then all we need to do is line up these two holes, not these two holes up with the two holes that are in the core cartridge. So I should just be able to rotate this around and you can see both of them line up right there. So I'm halfway between both, and you can tell that you're aligned. So now all I'm going to do is put my T25 Torx bolts into the vane housing. And while I'm putting these in, I'm not relieving any pressure from the housing onto the core because I don't want this to fall off the top. Otherwise it will be starting from the scratch. And then all you guys need to do is reassemble everything in reverse order. Now that you have all three of your T25 Torx bolts installed in the vane housing, all we need to do is verify that our control vanes are moving in and out with the actuation of the control arm. So there shouldn't be too much tension on this control arm to move the vanes. So that's I would say a decent amount of pressure, but it's light. So if yours is not light, then what I would do is loosen up the three bolts again. Don't take them completely out, but try and shift the housing around on the inside to loosen up those vanes, and then tighten the bolts back down until you get just a really light amount of pressure to move the vanes. And then once all that's done, we can then place it into our exhaust side.